confirm that we have a quorum. When I call your name, please say here. Jeffrey Coburn. Here. Candace Stroke White.
Here.
Marissa Neal.
She's not
Not yet. Sean.
Yes.
She just joined.
Okay. Marissa Neal.
I'm here. Sorry.
Here. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Charlie Bell.
Here.
No? Here. Okay. Sajad Jamil. And Charlie Pertola. Here. Thank you. Ms. Hamilton, let's move to introductions this morning.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do this one and probably do it again next week when she,
Okay.
or next month when she is back in the office. This morning, Rachel Mudd joined us this morning as a compliance officer in our community compliance program. Ms. Mudd received her bachelor's degree in sustainability and communications from the University of Louisville in 2024. She and her community compliance counterparts are actually out this morning on a prescribed burn. We don't see very many of those, so I'm really glad that she was able to go out and observe this one. I did want to let the board know that as part of her undergraduate work in 2023, Ms. Mudd facilitated an interview with the district that covered everything from how the district operates, communicates, shares decision-making, and works to improve air quality. A number of us from district leadership were part of that interview, and it really was a great opportunity for us to share our work. And I'm especially gratified that after we did that, Ms. Mudd actually applied for it and is now a part of our team. So
The described burn, like, it doesn't occur often. Where's this one being taken?
So there's it's in a farm out off Taylorsville Road.
So it's a private homeowner?
It's private homeowner. He's got a pretty decent sized farm, animal, sheep and stuff. They've done them at this place before. I've been at
Okay,
Little Dove Farm, I believe.
cool. All right,
do you remember?
No.
okay. And then public recognitions.
Yes. So next week, we'll celebrate Administrative Professionals Week and recognize the administrative professionals who keep the district running. And that'll be on Wednesday, April 23rd. Their contributions are not only in support of the district's work, but also support the board. Many of you know these staff members, including Monica Little, our administrative coordinator, Kevin Clusta, our records coordinator, Andy Furton, our info systems analyst, Karen Regan, management assistant, and of course, Sherry Staley, our executive assistant. So please join me in thanking them for their service today.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, we want to recognize all the help that we give you guys. It's greatly appreciated.
I wish
The God, well deserved.
this one were a little easier for me to share, but for the board, we'll also be saying goodbye to Sherry next week as she retires from Louisville Metro and the district on the 25th. I know many of you have met Sherry in person or spoken with her on the phone, and I want to thank her for her commitment to customer service on your behalf. Few of you know the depths of Sherry's customer service, but if she has someone who has a need, she will hunt down somebody to get an answer. And we are grateful for her. She's also made sure that as a district, we remember that it's important for us to share more than just our work life with each other. She has been instrumental in developing our social committee that does our chili cook-off in support of our community office of social services, formerly resilience and community services, winter holiday line. Big shoes to fill. We are all very grateful that Sherry will be going off to retirement with good, fun things to do. And I know she won't be a stranger. Thank you. Enjoyed it, Eric.
Well, and congrats on retiring. Well deserved. And personally, I want to thank you for the help that you've given me. Good luck and good health in your retirement.
Good deal.
Moving on is minutes, the meeting minutes from March 19, 2025 were distributed electronically. Does anybody on board have a comment correction on those minutes? Okay, hearing none, those minutes are approved. Which brings us to the public comment section. Ms. Robbins, has anyone wished to make a comment? Has anybody provided a written? Okay. Are there any members of the public in the Edison room that wish to make a comment? If there are, please come to the podium and state your name and who you represent, if anybody. Okay. Are there any members of the public that wish to make a brief comment on this video teleconference? If so, please raise your hand and you'll be called on. It's a feature you can find on the participants list or by pressing *3 and you'll be called on. Ms. Robbins.
See no raised.
Okay. That brings us to the end of the public comment period. There's no unfinished business, and likewise, there is no new business. In regards to committees, the minutes of the Policy and Strategy Committee was held on October 19th. Again, those minutes were distributed electronically. Are there any comments from the board on those minutes? Hearing none, those are approved. Which quickly brings us to the staff report. Moving right on.
We are moving right along this one. So the district recently posted 4 positions: an administrator, APCD air monitoring project coordinator, executive assistant, and environmental coordinator. These positions are now closed, so we will be reviewing applications and scheduling interviews in the next few weeks. We're very gratified that so many people are interested in joining the district and helping us with our air quality work. Generally speaking, we've had somewhere between 10 and 15 applicants for the majority of the positions. We've yet to see how many we'll get for the executive assistant or the executive administrator, but I expect that we'll see a lot more applicants for those positions because they cross so many different operational areas. For the technical positions, the APCD project coordinator and the environmental coordinator position, I've taken a quick look through the applications that we've received, and we have a lot of really great candidates to choose from. So
How many do you typically interview?
3 or 4 generally in the first tranche. If we need to move beyond that, we've gone beyond the occasion. We are also still in union negotiations. We met with the union 2 weeks ago, had a very productive meeting. We've made an initial financial offer. The union is now considering that. So my hope is that we will complete those negotiations soon, and I'll get back to regular order.
Is we the district or is it the?
It's metro
is it Metro?
government.
Okay.
In the AFSCME master that covers folks in our air monitoring section and community compliance section, as well as our management assistant, there are 12 different agencies in that single union master. Public health and wellness, MTS, Metro Technology Services, codes and regs, animal services, so corrections employee, APCD, and boy, I'm forgetting the rest, and I don't mean to do an injustice there. So there are needs of the agencies that we've expressed to Metro. There's needs that the union has expressed on their side, and of course, Metro has their own needs as well. So hopefully we'll see a conclusion here shortly. It should be no surprise for those who have been keeping track in the news that the Trump administration has canceled funding for a wide variety of previously congressionally appropriated projects. In early March, they identified 400 grants that included some climate work as well as environmental justice work for potential termination. Of those 400, there were 112 government to government environmental justice grants. We received one of those grants last year for our Rubbertown Air Toxics Health Assessment Project. It was $1 million grant. And on March 31st, we received notice of termination. At this point, we have some options that we are evaluating. One is an administrative remedy to dispute the termination. That goes to the regional administrator here in EPA Region 4. There's, of course, litigation, and there's a fair amount of litigation that's already been started by other grant awardees whose grants were terminated earlier. So we see the bases that they are challenging the administration on, and with Juan's assistant, as well as a lot of assistance from the county attorney's office and the mayor's office, we're evaluating those arguments.
The decision to pursue litigation is in Louisville Metro.
Yes, they are. Louisville Metro government is the awardee.
Okay.
With respect to the other option is to simply submit invoices and receive reimbursement through the date of termination. So there are options here that we're exploring. We'll keep the board informed as we move forward. With respect to our work with US EPA, we do that work in partnership, as you all know. The Clean Air Act sets out for EPA a specialized role. They're supposed to set the standards, do the research, fund our work, and state and local air pollution control agencies, also the Clean Air Act, have a special role, and that is to develop and implement plans to make sure that the air is clean. Our relationship with EPA is collaborative. We work frequently with folks at EPA Region 4 and in other parts of EPA around the country. With the new administration, a lot of our communications have been taking much longer than before. Folks are joining new teams, having new leadership. And so we've seen a slowdown in many of the routine type of engagements that we have with US EPA. For example, there is a National Air Monitoring Conference that usually takes place in the spring. This one has been canceled this year. Hopefully it will be rescheduled later in the year because it's really important for networking and for us to be aware of what's going on in the air monitoring world. I am happy to let you know that Matt King, Shannon Hosey, Karen Thorne, who are both supervisors in the permitting program, and David Becker, a new engineer 3 in our industrial compliance section, are at one of the first national conferences that US EPA has held, and that is an air toxics conference in Denver. This is the second air toxics conference that EPA has held in 20 years. The last one was 2 years ago, so we've had kind of a dry spell in between. But these are really important conferences for us to network with our peer state and local programs who are working with air toxics. Air toxics and those exposures are uniquely local, but it's also important to see where EPA is going with the federal air toxics program that forms the basis of our regulatory program. STAR, our Strategic Toxic Air Reduction Program, goes beyond those federal air toxics rules. But it's important we know which direction EPA is going in because a lot of their focus yields research that's informative of our program. And it also, in the past 10 years, has resulted in a lot of new technology that companies are able to use to better control their emissions. For our work, as Chairman Sullivan mentioned this morning, the strategy and the policy committees met last month, kicked off a public comment period for a suite of regulations that the district incorporates by reference. This is, excuse me, the Code of Federal Regulation, which we will be adopting as of July 1, 2024. Our Title 40 regulations that EPA implements are included in a volume of the Code of Federal Regulations that is published annually in July. So July 1 of 2024 is the most recent version, and that's what we'll be incorporating by reference and will relate to the new source performance standards and the national emissions standards for hazardous air pollutant rules that are included in regs 5.02 and 7.02 that we're also updating. Public comment period for that rulemaking will end on Monday, April 21st. We also have out for public comment our exceptional event demonstration. Public comment ends on that this Friday. We will review comments that we receive, prepare responses as appropriate, and then submit that to US EPA for their review and eventual concurrence. With that, are there any questions about that portion of my report?
No. not for
Sorry.
me.
You know. And if this is not an appropriate question, just. So I will get. When you say a $1 million grant is at risk, does that put a large percentage of your budget at risk to where you look at, potential staff effect on that?
No, that's a really great question. Thank you for that. This grant is a specific grant for a specific project. It does have one staff member that's funded through that grant. We have some flexibility to be sure that that well-qualified staff member has other options within the district. If we're not successful in disputing the grant and eventually continuing the good work that we need to do. For APCD, it funds a one-year study of air toxics and metal hazardous air pollutants. That work is being done through contract. So we have staff on the ground who are preparing canisters, deploying canisters, sending those off to the lab for analysis, and helping us to interpret that data to share with partners who are on that grant as well. And that includes the West Jefferson County Community Task Force, the University of Louisville Enviro Institute, Department of Development Community Health Centers, and Louisville Metro Public Health and Wellness. So at this point, I'm hopeful that we're able to dispute this if that's the path we choose to move forward appropriately. It's a great project. Lee Zeldin, who's the new administrator at EPA, in a March 4th op-ed in the New York Post, Times Post, stated that US EPA's core mission is protecting human health and the environment, and that among other things, conducting air monitoring is a key part of that core mission. That's what our study is. So we'll help share a little bit more detail about our work and be sure that the regional administrator has a chance to evaluate it in light of EPA's core mission.
Were there soft money positions dependent on this grant and other agencies or groups within?
Yes. So, the other groups do have staff. They do have some students who are doing work, particularly on the health risk assessment. And what the termination provides for is that we can seek reimbursement up to the date of termination. So, that's the goal. Ultimately is to be sure that we do get paid and that we can continue. If not, we have some work to do with EPA in terms of being able to access the system for funding. They have frozen out a lot of access to grants. It's not just environmental grants, but it's a national issue at this point. So we need a little clarity from them there. For the rest of our grants, we receive annually contribution to our day-to-day operations. That's through Section 105 of the Clean Air Act. Again, that's that core mission where EPA set the standards, do the research, pay state and locals. That is that part of the 1970 version of Clean Air Act. Nothing fancy about it. It provides about 18 to 20% of our funding. For the other annual contribution we get from US EPA, it's for particulate matter monitoring. It does fund a staff position as well as lab analysis and equipment purchases.
Thank you.
We have one other one-time grant from US EPA. It is a direct award from US EPA from some of their Inflation Reduction Act IRA grant funding. They call it a fence line grant is how they termed it. It's about an $847,000 grant. It will provide for equipment upgrades and replacements at our air monitoring sites for many of the criteria pollutant equipment that we run. It has a small trailerable sensor and regulatory monitor array with it. And it's a 3-year grant that does include a position. Based on conversations with EPA, that grant funding isn't as problematic to EPA as the environmental justice grants have been.
How far into the 3-year grant are you?
Just starting.
Just started.
Mhm. That's one of the positions that we recently posted. Any other questions? MSD is now here. Do you all have a presentation?
I do, I've got handouts, and I apologize for another meeting, so I didn't realize you were gonna get to me this quickly. So I apologize.
I can go ahead and if you need a moment, I will go ahead with my presentation and then you all can follow it. That's acceptable to you. And
I'm fine either way, whatever works for you.
Chairman Sullivan, what will work for you?
Oh, it's up to you guys.
We'll go ahead since Andy's got it teed up. Then we'll turn it over to MSD. MSD has completed its mid-year report. That's what they're here to report to the board on this morning. I've sent a copy of that to you electronically, so you'll have that in your inbox. All right. I'm going to ask Lauren to help me on this as well. Things have been a little busy around APCD here the past couple of weeks, and so we wanted to ensure to talk to the board and folks who join us on these meetings about the executive orders that we're seeing come out of the new administration. Next slide, please, Andy. So on March 12th, 2025, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin announced 31 deregulatory actions. Next page, please. The majority of these are affecting the air program. This includes reconsideration of the 2009 endangerment finding, which finds that greenhouse gases, as defined by 6 well-defined gases, are a pollutant for purposes of the Clean Air Act, and the actions that rely on those findings from the endangerment finding. Reconsideration of the Clean Power Plan 2.0, which addresses carbon emissions from existing power plants. Reconsideration of oil and gas industry regulations that address methane emissions. Reconsideration of mandatory greenhouse gas reporting program. Reconsideration of light duty, medium duty, and heavy duty vehicle that address greenhouse gas emissions. Reconsideration of recently adopted risk management program rule revisions. Reconsideration of mercury and air toxic standards for coal-fired plants, which were finalized in 2024. Reconsideration of the particulate matter national ambient air quality standard that was revised from 12 micrograms per cubic meter to 9 micrograms per cubic meter in 2024. Next slide, please. Reconsideration of multiple national emission standards for hazardous air pollutants. Restructuring the regional haze program, which requires state and federal partners to work together so that you can actually see 156 national parks and wilderness areas. Those of you who are my age remember those smoggy vistas. That program has been remarkably successful. Ending the Good Neighbor Plan, which required upwind states to take action to reduce nitrogen oxides, which is an ozone precursor. Working with states and tribes to resolve a backlog with state implementation plans. I'm happy to see that one because that is an issue that makes it harder for us to do our work too. And the administration says there are several hundred that exceed EPA's timeframes under the Clean Air Act. Reconsideration of exceptional events rulemaking to work with states to prioritize the allowance of prescribed fires within the exceptional event rule. And lastly, reconstituting the Science Advisory Board and Clean Air Scientific Advisory Committee. So they've gotten started on some of these. They have called for applicants for the Science Advisory Board and the Clean Air Scientific Advisory Committee. And we'll talk about some of the other initiatives here in just a moment. Y'all know I'm a regulatory nerd. I like the way rules are made. It's a very set process. Public notice and comment. You receive feedback. View the rule in light of that feedback. You make a determination, and then you implement it. Environmental regulation is only done with public participation. That's been its hallmark. That stakeholders, whether it's community or industry, regulators, other decision makers, have a voice in sharing concerns about environmental issues and environmental rules. Generally, the Administrative Procedure Act has the basic requirements that set out notice and comment rulemaking. Again, that's so we can all have a voice. And notice and comment, though, has some exceptions, including for good cause, for emergencies, or when things are impracticable. Next slide, please. The reason that I wanted to bring this up today is that we are seeing in some recent executive orders an allowance to specifically address certain of the regulatory reconsiderations that I mentioned without benefit of notice and comment rulemaking. So let's talk about these executive orders because Lauren helped put together some pretty interesting stats. We are on day 87.
Today is day 87.
Not yet day 100. There have been 124 executive orders issued to date. In comparison, during the first Trump administration, there were just 220 issued throughout that entire 4-year period. Franklin D. Roosevelt did have 99 executive orders within his first 100 days, but we're past that. And 15 of the 124 are directly related to climate and energy. There are others, however, that are having implications throughout all regulatory programs, including rules and regulations, but also funding. So there's a large suite of things happening here. Next slide. For those who visit the White House's website, this is a place where you can find all of these executive orders. There are 3 things you might see: an executive order, a proclamation, or a memoranda. Executive orders are directives the president writes to officials within the executive branch that require them to take or stop some action related to policy or management. They are numbered, they are published in the Federal Register. They cite the authority by which the president is making the order. The Office of Management and Budget issues a budgetary impact analysis for each order. There are proclamations. We're all kind of familiar with those. Those are directives that typically relate to private individuals or celebratory events like holidays and other commemorations. And then there are memoranda. They're similar to executive orders. One, I believe they have force and effect of law, but they're not numbered, nor do they have the same publication requirements, and OMB is not required to issue a budgetary impact statement. I'll confess, I've looked at executive orders throughout my career. I've never had cause to really sit down and kind of think about why did this one come out as an executive order and why did this one come out as a memorandum. We are seeing that these are being used with some distinction. To give you an example, next slide, please, Andy.
Can I ask a question on that?
Mhm.
So in regards to executive orders and the impact analysis, where does that occur before or after the fact of the executive order?
It's a good question.
How
In-
depth?
Typical rulemaking. Well, that's a good question too sometimes. In typical rulemaking, EPA is, and other administrative agencies are required to prepare a regulatory impact assessment that evaluates the costs and the benefits. That can really slow down major rulemakings, particularly when we're talking about, rules that have widespread national impact. They've got a lot of different models that they use to try to assess those benefits and costs. EPA has an entire group of financial analysts who do that sort of work. That comes out with the proposed rule. I'm not really sure when OMB does its assessment, but what we're seeing kind of a cascade and a linkage between these executive orders. And so, next slide, please, Andy. Take this one, for example. This is Executive Order number 14156, which came out early in the new administration, declaring a national energy emergency. So this declares a national energy emergency, directs the use of any lawful emergency authorities and all other lawful authorities to facilitate the identification, leasing, siting, production, transportation, refining, and generation of domestic energy resources, including but not limited to on federal lands. Agencies were directed to submit recommendations to the president to exercise federal eminent domain authorities or authorities afforded under the Defense Production Act. Next slide, please. This is an example of a proclamation. Regulatory relief for certain stationary sources to promote American energy. It exempts certain sources subject to the national emission standards for hazardous air pollutants. These are specific to coal and oil-fired electric generating utilities. From the amendments to the existing mercury and air toxics standard. This is one of those national emission standard for hazardous air pollutants that Lee Zeldin said they would be reconsidering in an earlier, his March 12th statements. It provides for an up to 2-year waiver of the compliance deadline. Essentially, this is an extension of the time that companies would have to comply with these new standards. They used a portion of the Clean Air Act, and said it before, nobody at APCD knows the whole Clean Air Act. It's too big, covers too much ground. We have worked together as a collective whole. Section 112 I-4 provides that the president, upon petition from a company, may provide for an up to 2-year waiver of a deadline when a standard does not have the technology available to implement it, and he makes a finding that it's in the national security interest to do so. This provision was used to provide for relief here. I want to let folks know that in the mercury air toxics rule amendments that came out in May of last year, there are 2 provisions. One is to apply the basic mercury air toxics rule, which has been in place since 2011 or 12, to lignite coal-fired plants. Those plants were excluded initially. Now they're going to be subject to the basic mercury air toxics standard. It also provided for a new standard for fine particulates as a surrogate for metal hazardous air pollutants. Current standard is 0.03 ppb. The new standard, which will take effect in 2027, the rule was 0.01 ppb. As part of the rulemaking, EPA noted that 93% of the coal-fired plants in the country are already meeting the new standard because they have technology called sorbent injection in place as a requirement of the initial MATS rule from 2011-2012. This waiver applies to about 7% of coal-fired plants. There are a couple in Kentucky and in Indiana that are in that 7%, but the administration did come out day before yesterday and produce a list of those plants that had applied for and been granted a time extension under this rule. The administration will now conduct its reconsideration of the mercury air toxic standard going forward. This last is an example of a presidential memoranda. And it's one I really want to draw your attention to. It provides that agency heads shall finalize rules without notice and comment, where doing so is consistent with the good cause exception in the Administrative Procedure Act. That exemption allows agencies to dispense with notice and comment rulemaking when the process would be impracticable, unnecessary, or contrary to the public interest. Retaining and enforcing facially unlawful regulations is clearly contrary to the public interest. For those of you who do a little research looking through these memoranda, there is another executive order that lists certain Supreme Court decisions, including Loper Bright, which is the Chevron deference rule that applies to many agency decisions. Some specific Supreme Court decisions that affect the air program, particularly related to the Clean Power Plan and the Good Neighbor Plan. But it also has a provision that relates back to another executive order where agency heads were directed to review their rules for removal. Also another executive order that requires sunsetting after 5 years, sunset provisions being adopted within all federal regulations. So we'll see how that one moves forward as well. The basis for this presidential memoranda is retaining and enforcing facially unlawful regulations clearly contrary to the public interest. Furthermore, notice and comment proceedings are unnecessary where repeal is required as a matter of law to ensure consistency with the ruling of the United States Supreme Court. Agencies thus had ample cause and legal authority to immediately repeal unlawful regulations. This is a different type of rulemaking. It's one that will be more difficult for the public to be involved in. My guess is there'll be some involvement after decisions are made through litigation. But for people who are interested in these, next slide, please, Andy. Here's where you can keep up with all of these decisions. The White House Presidential Actions webpage, the Federal Register 2025 Donald J. Trump Executive Orders, and also the Federal Register Donald J. Trump Other Presidential Actions web pages. So, I had told the board that, when administrations change, we expect regulatory change. That's just what happens when you have administration changes. The thing I generally liked most about my job was the fact that when these administration changes happen, it gives you a chance to reevaluate priorities of the federal government, which is our partner through cooperative federalism, look at our own resources, be sure we have what we need to do the work needed to satisfy our air planning agreement with US EPA, as well as meet our own local needs for those issues that have that unique local impact, air toxics, or risk management. This one's challenging. The pace of regular rulemaking is kind of glacial. It doesn't happen very quickly because EPA has to provide a lot of background and information in that regulatory impact assessment. This is much faster. It's something new. So it is a bit of a challenge for us here to pivot and stay up to date with these, but with Lauren Robbins, Flannery O'Neill, Juan, and myself, and our partners across the nation, we're really trying to help each other understand what this means for the regulatory work we do. I am a very old regulator. I've been doing this work now for almost 40 years. But I'm much like industry and other stakeholders. Certainty is good. Certainty lets us look at our resources and use those in the most effective manner possible. Certainty with industrial sources, help them guide where they're going to make those next capital investments. And so hopefully what we'll see as we reach that end of that first 100 days is that they have their executive orders in place. And now the agencies will begin their work to implement the regulatory direction set in the executive orders. As we do that, as always, we will keep the board informed. Are there any questions?
My original question. Executive orders that are required, assuming they have the supporting justification or analysis of impact.
I've not seen the OMB.
So it's an after the fact.
We'll look for that. Lauren, that's probably something that we'll go ahead and figure out and send the board a quick note. If we see a regulatory impact assessment for one of these executive orders, we'll attach that and share that as we move forward.
A lot of times it directs 30 days out or 60 days out, certain agencies to take certain actions in conjunction with OMB or another agency. So there could be some time frame that is considered before there's development of any impact that can be assessed.
Okay.
Any other questions?
One question, many of the executive orders, as we know, not just ones concerning the environment. And it's not being legal. For ones on the environment, particularly air quality, I'm sure many of those are being challenged in the court as well. Who would be the plaintiffs there? Would these be interest groups, non-governmental organizations? Do you have any idea, like the nature and character of these lawsuits?
Yes, you are absolutely correct. There will be non-governmental organizations like the Sierra Club, for example, or Earth
Justice.
Justice. There will be state attorney generals. Last administration, the state attorney general sued EPA, all the time. There'll be state attorney generals who object to these. Well, institutions may also join in some of these. There's going to be a lot of litigation. That too is a lengthy process. Several of these have been challenged and stays have been issued to the administration. There's an executive order that froze a lot of federal funding. And so I believe that there's been a stay issued that says to the administration, you need to let these people get the money. Figure out the details of what you want to do later, but cutting them off before you have the details, can't do that. They'll work their way through the court. With Juan and Lauren's assistance, we'll try to keep the board up to date on that litigation. But there's always, multiple steps. There can be an emergency petition for a stay. That will be one part of a specific litigation that may come all the way up through appeals and on. There'll be the actual litigation itself on the underlying issue. So there's lots of reading to do. Sorry.
I guess the characteristic time for resolving these is years, right? A few years.
Yes. Problematically, one of the things that I see at this point is that without notice and comment rulemaking, there is an opportunity for the administration to make very quick decisions with respect to a suite of regulations that impact the air program in fundamental ways. How that will eventually play out through the litigation process as opposed to rulemaking, which again gives us some certainty. We'll see. Stay tuned. I don't really know what to say here these days, other than the tail end of the Obama administration. We had 8 years of the Obama administration, and they were very productive in terms of regulatory work. And I would go home most weekends with a stack of Federal Register notices to read. Trump administration, much fewer regulatory actions. That gives us a great chance internally to do strategic planning during this time and to, really evaluate our own program. Biden administration, lots more Federal Registers. It's the way the pendulum swings. This one, I don't expect to read as many Federal Register notices, but the case law is going to be huge. Again, we are remarkably well represented with our national peers through the National Association of Clean Air Agencies and the Association of Air Pollution Control Agencies. And they will help us all try to stay up to date on this. It's going to be a ton of litigation coming.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
My son.
Any other questions?
Action committee,
All
money's there.
right, with that, I will introduce. Ms. Bell, do you have a question? Okay. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Kimberly Reed with Metropolitan Sewer District to the board this morning. As I said earlier, MSD under the amended agreed board order with the Air Pollution Control Board has been working diligently to effectuate. That is a word that's used throughout these executive orders, and now it's the one I use the most these days, and I'm on the tip of my tongue. That they are now effectuating that agreed board order. So, Ms. Reed.
Well, good morning. I apologize for not having this electronic. I'm trying to make sure I do that next time for the ones that are mobile, but it's more pictures than words, so it should be pretty easy to follow along. But I do like to always give folks visuals for those in the audience so that you kind of can see what we're talking about. As Rachel stated, I'm gonna start out with that first page there. We signed an agreed order, as you were fully aware of, with the ABCD board. And that new agreed order, so it's the second amended agreed order, was effective as of September of 2024. And so I wanted to kind of walk through the requirements of quickly high level, what was an agreed order. I'm going to talk a little bit about the action plans and then roll into kind of the highlights of the year and some of the deliverables in the reporting and the mid-year report. So for the agreed order, it required us to do 2-year action plans. So that included a short-term action plan, which you all should have received. That was for the first 2 years, so we're currently in that one. We will also be doing a medium-term action plan for fiscal year 27 and 28, and a long-term action plan for fiscal year 29 and fiscal year 30. So our fiscal year is July 1 through June 30th. So let's make sure we're all in the same time periods here. One of the other things that we agreed to, again, this is a high-level list here. You've got a copy or should have a copy of the second amended agreed board order sometime. If you need another copy, we can send it out. That we committed to continue to do 5 community meetings, at least 5 community meetings annually, as well as provide monthly Metro Council member updates. So it's kind of a 1-page newsletter that we send out every month. We started in February of 2024, and we've been consistently providing that update to our Metro Council members. Another requirement of the agreed order is that a mid-year status report be due March 31st of each year. So the mid-year for this year, for the first half of the short-term action plan, the first 6 months of the short-term action plan, was due March 31st of this year. So March 31st of 2025. you receive copies of that, and we'll walk through some of the details on that as well. And then an annual report is due September 30th. So we will be providing an annual report to you via mail and electronically for the full first fiscal year of that short-term action plan. So short-term action plan. So in that plan, what did we talk about? You should have received a copy. We talked about our communications and response. It's very important for us to focus on getting the word out to our community. So in addition to the community meetings, we also did other meetings with Metro Council members, as well as visit churches and did some op-eds, et cetera, to try to ensure that we're communicating with our community on what we are doing to address odors. We also heightened some of our response activities, ensuring that we did some more letters, phone calls, and even on-site visits upon request, if in fact a customer is consistently having, issues of concern. So the work activities activities planned for the time period I mentioned earlier. It was going to focus predominantly on the areas with the higher order concerns. So we're talking west of Broadway. And the projects, of course, would be in those areas. So not just in the collection system, but there's treatment projects, there's catch basin projects, as well as there will continually be some pump station projects as well. The short-term action plan itself included about 16 projects, and it estimated about $106 million to be expended with all of these projects. It's important to note that the bulk of those funds are in the treatment, particularly Morse Foreman, and a lot of those are consent decree projects related to consent decree.
What's the time frame over the 106 million?
This $106 million is specifically for that short-term action plan, so that 2-year plan only.
Are you folks going to put together a simplified checklist against this? Kind of like, here's what we committed to, here's the dates we made it or missed it.
Yeah, when we go through this, what you will see is a first step at listing the various projects that are in the short-term action plan.
Okay.
And what the estimated dollars are, as well as where we are, whether we're 20% complete on that project or what the case might be, or if we're planning to start later or what. But we'll go over that a little bit later, but that's specific to the projects that were outlined in the short-term action plan.
Okay.
So we are doing it in 2-year increments. We're doing that on purpose because the fact of the matter is, as we walk through all of these items that we're identifying that are concerns from an odor perspective, and we make changes, it changes things. It changes the system. So sometimes we have to reevaluate what's the next appropriate step. For example, some of the projects we have in here for the short-term action plan are actual studies. So look at the study, do the analysis, let's figure out what's the best way to treat this particular area. So I can't map out yet what those are until I've done some of that initial work.
Okay, so let me say it a little different.
Okay.
So then basically the medium term and long term plans are TBD.
That is correct. According to the agreed order, the medium-term plan is not due until be submitted until fiscal year 26.
But there are portions of those medium and long-term plans that will include underway consent order work with US EPA.
There are several items in the short-term action plan that have underway consent decree items. That is correct.
See, the reason I ask something like that is corporate experience. Like if I put a short-term plan, I can bury it in the medium and long, or if I have a great year, I can move stuff up.
Well, I guess in theory you can, but that's why we're committed to 2-year window on those plans, as well as there are specific projects outlined in the second amended agreed order that, we're stating that within this window of time period here, we're working to get those projects complete. Okay. Any other questions?
Got it, real. What's west of Broadway? I mean, that's really kind of north, east, west.
That's in Broadway. That should be 9th Street.
Okay,
My apologies, it should be 9th Street.
okay.
So basically west of 9th, yeah,
Okay.
west of 9th Street. That's a good question. I think I made that error before and missed it. Okay. Any other thing I missed?
Thank you.
No, I love it, because I would have asked the same question. But basically, if you're familiar with the districts, it's districts 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, I believe, are the ones that we've been focusing on out of a concern of increased
Thank you.
odors, complaints in those areas. Sure.
On the short-term plan, is it safe to make an assumption that most of the improvements are based on current state-of-the-art technology and not any kind of new technology or leading edge?
Well, well, how would you define new edge? Coming with like current day today? If I planned this out a few months ago, it's not gonna be something that just came to existence today. However, one of the projects we have in here for our short-term action plan that's consent decree related is a biosolids process, which is thermal hydrolysis process that we're gonna be putting in place. That for us is more new age, and it's not as, it's used in the industry, but it is one of the more advanced ways to handle our biosolids.
Okay.
We will evaluate those things. That's part of the reason why the 2 years is important, because technology changes, ways of addressing odors changes, our system changes and improves, so that way we can be more effective in actually addressing the concerns.
Okay. Yeah,
Did I answer that?
pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Because what, like, a bad example,
Okay.
it's not directly applicable to this. You might have current software that doesn't do certain things. And then a software programmer writes extensions to this program and do all things. So in maybe in this world, it's refinements to equipment technology that allow you to do things different or better.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely opportunity for that. So, the focus is going to be on how do we mitigate odors as much as possible. Part of that's going to be actual technology equipment, pre-treatment, chemical treatment, vapor treatment. That's what you're going to be doing for the most part. However, is there a piece to that that ties to more technology on being more aware when these are high besides a customer call? Absolutely. Is there technology that'll provide us with just more data on what's happening? Absolutely. So those are things that as we go through this and implement these treatments, for lack of a better word, or like that word, for these projects that should look to mitigate odors, we will have to look how to improve the processes or align those processes with the work that we do every day.
So it sounds like there's going to be a big focus on new sensors,
I would say that
technology
scrubbers for sure. I mean, we've got scrubbers now, and we've got biofilters. We've got that technology now. We have some sensors. I think that we will be evaluating what makes the most sense as we implement these projects within what we're trying to accomplish. Best answer I can get right now.
That's all right.
Okay.
Yeah. Knowledge changes all the answers.
Well, it does. And technology, as we all know, is exploding. So and my guys over there, which I'll introduce in a minute, I'm always looking for what is the new technological way to do this. But, okay, so this information that we are talking through today, I'll try to skip through a little bit, because I think it's taking a little bit of time. But one thing I did want to point out is each stage of these, whether it be the action plan, the mid-year report, et cetera, we are posting all this information to our website to make it readily available to the community, as well as distributing it to Rachel and your group, as well as the mayor's office, et cetera. So to make sure that we're trying to make sure we're being transparent here. The mid-year report requirements you see there on the left, I pretty much summarized those. Couple things is, the report includes a summary of, what the progress is on each project, the budget, as well as expenditures to date. It also talks about what we think we're going to do on that specific project within the next 6 months. Okay. I'm going to now flip to, I think, page 5. So let's jump into the mid-year report, some highlights here. So one thing I wanted to quickly show that for 2024, this is the calendar year 2024, because again, we're talking about odor season. It's really going to be that year. We had 1,693 total odor complaints, which will end up being a 33% reduction from the prior year. There's a lot of things that can contribute to that, but we are consistently tracking that. We're also working on some improved dashboards to get some information out on our website so that it can be a little more visually appealing and easier for our customers to see. From a response perspective, I stated a little bit earlier that we implemented sending out letters, making phone calls, doing on-site visits So we didn't start that until later, I guess around the fall timeframe, but that is something we're going to continue in 2025. And so I wanted to highlight the fact that we are actively making those calls. And then again, I talked about our engagement already, but if we talk about the projects quickly, we did complete one project that was outlined in the short-term action plan, and it was presented to our board and certified for completion. We also had one additional project. So in the second amended agreed order, there are specific projects outlined that that we had agreed to. These are ones we're going to work on. It also has language if there's additional projects that we identified that would be important that from an odor mitigation perspective, that we would include those and report on those. So we had a biofilter enhancement and improvement that we did at our main diversion facility. So we wanted to make sure that we reported on that as well. So that's one of the extra ones that was included in your report. We've done about 108, we've done 108 catch basins have been replaced in the community to date. Again, those are mostly west of 9th Street, why I said Broadway. With the exception of, I think there's about 19 that were in the New Lou area because there was work that was being done already by Public Works. We knew we were going to need to get there. We didn't want to tear up the streets twice. So
So these public works, when they come across their normal projects, do they themselves address some of those catch basins or?
no, we would go back and they might report them to us, but we would do that catch basin work. One of the things that we haven't quite done yet, but I'm going to state it, we're starting to have that conversation with them to figure out if we can coordinate some of those activities. What we don't want to do again is they tear up the street, we come right back, tear up the street. So when are you going to be out there working? And this is our next target area. How can we kind of organize that so that it's less disruptive?
Okay, thank you. You know, the shift in the graph of the order complaints is interesting. It just dropped it moved back to the summer in 2024 versus late in the year in 2023, which is somewhat interesting to me. It's not intuitive that it would be. But just nothing else, the heat.
Yeah, dry. Yeah, it just, it's the temperature as well as the lack of water, rain.
Yeah.
All of that contributes to it. I wish I could just have a little magic ball and say,
Yeah.
we're going to have problems right here and there. Let's go do this. But yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Just to make a comment on that, that can also be affected by if you implemented some major changes earlier in 2024 that also help reduce shifting around.
So don't want to jump in and set unrealistic expectations here, but what I will say is that to the point that board member Bertolin. Okay, is stating that, the hope is as we continue to put these projects in place, we will start seeing, a decrease in complaints. Now, keep in mind, this is actual complaints from customers. So the more we're communicating with them as well and informing them of this, what's happening and the changes we're making, sometimes that helps as well. We've done some more active watering in our systems in key areas as well to try to improve some of the odor. So we're going to continue to do those things, but again, temperature does impact. Okay. Yeah. So the last thing I have is, I believe, Charlie, if that's okay, kind of what you were getting at. So I'm sorry, not the last page. This is page 6. So page 6 is kind of a quick snapshot. So we will eventually get some type of list up on the website, a project list where we can kind of see the status of each of the projects as we go along. So these are specific now to the short-term action plan projects, because again, we haven't really defined the other ones yet because we're doing it in 2-year windows. But what this does is you'll see, and I've highlighted here, so the yellow ones are the ones where we have had some progress already. And those first 3, the first 2 are consent decree projects that are specific to Morris Foreman and the work that we're doing there to rehabilitate and rehab some of the basins and also to work on our biosolids project. As you see, those are out multi-years and they'll take at least the biosolids out to September 28. And some of the rehabilitation of the basins are going to be later this year. And then we've got a pump station, some odor control work that we're working on as well. But the point here that I'm trying to show is that it's showing you here what the budget is. And again, it's for just that time period, the fiscal year 25, the fiscal year 26 budget, if I can get my words together. Shows you what you've expended just in the window we're reporting. I'll make sure I'm clear on this, as well as where we feel we are from a percent complete. Now, most of these for the construction projects are really coming from our construction engineering folks. They're saying this is about where we are. Things move along, things slow down, but this gives you some feel for how we're progressing. You'll see. Okay.
This is great. This gives you the snapshot at about 20,000 feet to look down. And if you want to get into the weeds, then you can.
That's what that report's for. It gives you more detail on what's done in each one of these, the report that I believe we've shared. Okay. Oh, so the bold one is the one that we completed. So one of the projects was to do an odor management plan for Dirk Guthrie Treatment Center, as well as the surrounding collection system there. So the actual management, a study was done. We've developed a response, and we've identified what are those things that we need to do, and we'll be slotting those in going forward in our next plans. If that makes sense. Continue on down. Let's see. Again, you got more treatment there. I'm going to stop at the collection system, the first E there, the study. So for the collection system, it's one of those ones where we are still trying to figure out what it is we need to do and how effectively to treat it. So you'll see most of these are studies. Is there a better type of chemical to use? Can we do some vapor air treatments? What can we do? So we're actively trying to get started on those, focusing on the western outfall, because it is that line, quite frankly, that runs straight down Broadway and down to Shawnee Park and further down toward Morris Foreman, where it tends to be kind of a hot pocket. And so we're focusing there first in fiscal year 25. And it is, again, one of the first things that was listed in our short-term action plan. We're trying to hit the larger concern areas first, I guess is what I would say. If it has not started yet, it's in white, and you'll see I have over to the right there when it's projected to start. The other bold one I have here for catch basins, that's inspections. So one of the things we're doing is we are going out and inspecting all the catch basins in our combined system. Because just to understand their condition, one, repair them if we can. But if in fact they need to be replaced because they don't have a trap, and you've probably heard about the trap, but we like to explain it's like under your sink where you have that water level that prevents the air from getting out and the odorous air from getting out. And so what we've done is we've started going through replacing those in key areas. I mentioned Nulu. I mentioned we've done some in Maple Street. I can't think of what it's called right now, but Shawnee, we've done Shawnee. We've done some in different areas as well. And so as we continue to go through inspections, we're looking, identifying what are those, what's happening in each of these different districts. What are those catch basins that need to be identified and need to be replaced. So it's bold because it's ongoing. It's gonna take us a while to, do that. So it's an ongoing type of scenario that you'll see that line item carried between short-term to midterm, et cetera, as we continue to work through the catch basins. And then further down, you see the various catch basins by neighborhood. It's right in front of me. I don't know why I call it, I had to remember it. But California is one that we've done 65% of those. And then I've mentioned Nulu, and we've done some work also in Shawnee. We've done several Shawnee as well. So to the right there to tell you, again, if it's under construction, where we are, and if it's projected to start, when it's projected to start. Now, what we will do as we do these mid-year reports, so in the annual report, it's just outlining the second amended agreed order. If in fact any of the dates change, something slow, or for some reason we can't move, funding, whatever, then we'll address that and say, for this reason, this is why this one has been slowed or why it didn't get completed or whatever the case might
Do
be.
you guys rely much on the federal grant program too?
Well, of course we do.
So how many of yours have been?
Right now, we're okay, is what I'm hearing. Right now, we're okay. There's some that we were pursuing that let me put it this way. Ones that we've already been awarded to us, we think we're fine with, which is true for most people. There was at least 2 or 3 I'm aware of that we were looking to pursue that we're just not sure if we're going to get anything out of it, to be honest. So then it's, is there other funds, or what do we do to balance out the
Don't say
financial? No,
Don't say
but I think, well, what I will say is that then we have to prioritize.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, now me being over odors, that's a conversation I'm having to have. So how do we prioritize, some of these older projects, as it relates to other projects when money is as it is. So we might have to report on some of that in the future, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and last, I just wanted to throw a quick slide out about odor season. I wanted to first introduce, both Stacy Huber and Tony Woods. Stacy and Tony are joining me, work on with our odor mitigation efforts. So, we've committed to doing quite a bit in this second amended agreed order, and we want to ensure that we continue to focus on odors and that the community knows that we're focused on odors. And we're doing that by getting out and communicating. We're doing that by being proactive in responding. We're doing that by actively working on these projects with the rest of the organization. And so Tony and Stacy are coming over as my odor mitigation program managers to really help try to move this along. Both very, very talented and knowledgeable. Stacy was in the treatment plants. She was a process supervisor, but now she's of course one of our managers. And Tony Woods was in our drainage areas. He was a drainage supervisor. He's very well versed on the collection system and the catch basin, and Stacy, the collection system and treatment as well. So we'll be able to even dig in a little bit more and look at some things there. So wanted to introduce them and thank them for joining me today. Only other things I had here was a few things from the things that we're kicking off this year. We are made some updates to our webpage, not a lot, but we did reorganize it some. We wanted to make it a little easier for our customers because we're beginning to post all of the reporting to the website. We didn't, the way it was previously, you'd scroll and you have to keep scrolling and kind of find it. We really put icons and try to group things so you can more easily find the data. So you say all the action plans are here and the reporting is here. It makes it a little bit easier. Likewise, we are making sure that we're still doing our community engagement. So we've sent out 50,000 postcards. We just did that first part of April, informing folks of our clarity meetings. So we went on and identified those 5 meetings that we're going to have, which are listed here. The meetings will all be held at our new main office at 1600 West Hill Street. They will be at 6 p.m. And we are right now, and I'm being told we can still do it. Our plan is to do in-person and virtual. But we want to make sure that folks who can't get to the building still have an opportunity to be able to hear the updates and to ask questions.
You completely out of the downtown building?
We are not. We are currently still in the downtown building.
Okay.
Yes. But, we're going to host our meetings in that building. It has a nicer, bigger room that we can do that a little more effectively. And then we're going to be sending out a letter, basically saying odor season's coming sometime in June. And we printed out several flyers to distribute as well, announcing the clarity meetings, and go to our website, et cetera, that we plan to distribute to libraries, community meetings, and things of that nature.
Okay. Questions from board? Has anyone been asked? Well, we appreciate you coming and giving us an update, and we're certainly glad to see progress being made and communication occurring. So thanks.
Thank you.
Includes my report.
Okay, very good.
Stand in line.
And again, you've gotten the reports that come every month in the board package. If anybody have any questions on the being 2.5 or ozone or enforcement. Okay. If not, we're going to adjourn the meeting and note that the next one will be May 21st, 2025 at 10 a.m. at this location. Thanks for coming.
This is Sherry's last board meeting.
When everyone is.
Yeah, it is.